Okay, I think we're good. I think we're good. Coach Platt, good to see you, man.
How you doing, guys?
Good. All right. Okay. Well, let's get started. If someone else jumps in, they jump in. I owe Coach May a call there too, Matt. He hit me last night or the night before. We were each other's wingmen on a foreign recruiting trip one time.
How about that?
Yeah, he is he's an absolute wild man in a very good way. He and Joe Pasternak go way back, so we had some Joe Past stories as well. But
I think he's got a chance to have a good year. I was impressed.
That's awesome.
I thought that just how he structured practice. I thought the pace at which they were practicing. I thought his communication, the energy in the gym. You know, I think this time of year too, Coach, and you know this, like, I feel like we as coaches sometimes waste time, right? And we get in there, we're like, oh man, we got to be in there for 2.5 hours. Like and I didn't feel like he had a single second of wasted time in practice, which I thought was really, really impressive.
That is impressive. That's the ideal practice, right? A great pace, no wasted time. All things you're doing are applicable to winning games and helping your players get better. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's it. That's it.
So guys, we had Coach McCall on a Twitter Spaces a couple weeks ago and talked ball screen offense. You know, it was actually kind of fun because without having a board to diagram on or film to show, to kind of talk through ball screen offense, I thought it went really, really well, Matt, and I thought you did a great job. I'm absolutely fascinated with people who have who use ball screen offense in a systematic way and teach their players how to read, when to do this, when to do that, and I thought it was great. And we wanted to have Coach McCall back, and he actually has some video evidence now that this stuff actually works. You know, so we're gonna jump into that. But Coach, is there an introduction? Let me say this first of all. It's the way the game is played. It's great to coach that way. Players love to play pick and roll. To quote Brett Nelson, if he was on the call right now, he'd call it pick and roll. He would refuse to call it ball screen offense. He's going to be our Twitter Spaces guest Monday, Coach McCall, so we can bust his chops a little bit.
I'll chime in. I'll have a question.
Yeah,
there's no question about that.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah.
But players love to play, and I'm fascinated with people who do it at a really, really high level. So any introduction, Coach McCall, on that? I mean, maybe your background, how you kind of got started with with implementing that in your offensive system?
Yeah, Coach, let me start off by saying this. I think, everyone on the call right now obviously has a desire to grow and improve and get better. And I have just tremendous respect for that. I think sometimes as coaches, we get so caught up in the season and we get so caught up in recruiting, or we got to, really quickly to respond to a text, but there's always time to grow and get better. And the fact that everyone's on this call trying to do that, I think that's just awesome. Let me start off by saying that. And there's always time. I wish sometimes when I was a younger coach and even as an assistant coach that I would have taken more time to try to learn and get better. And you may get off this call and say, hey man, I don't want to run that stuff. That's not something I want to put when I get my opportunity as a head coach or moving forward or whatever it is, but maybe it helps you defensively sometime down the road. So I just, the fact that everyone's on this call right now trying to grow and get better, man, I have so much respect for that. So I just think in terms of my offensive philosophy, obviously the 11 years I spent at the University of Florida, I think a couple things on why Coach Donovan has had so much success in the NBA. One is because of the type of person he is and how humble he is, and two, it's his offensive philosophy around running pick and rolls. Had an opportunity at Chattanooga to work with Reggie Witherspoon. He was on my staff there. This whole pick and roll continuity, we called it special. Some people call it bigs high, whatever it may be. It's essentially 5 out with a lot of movement, a lot of moving parts. Reggie's one of the guys that he taught me a lot of different things about this offense and a lot of different, options. And I just think it's really, really difficult to guard, right? If you look back at that Dayton team that Anthony had, the pandemic year, when they were, number 2 in the country, essentially going into the NCAA tournament. This is essentially what they were running night in and night out. And there's a million different options out of it. You can get really, really creative. You can make it more complicated than it needs to be, or you can just become really, really good at running it. And when you become that and you see the reads and different things like that, it can be very difficult to guard. It was our primary offense at Chattanooga when we had, successful teams there. It was our primary offense at UMass. I think if you look at our offensive numbers over my tenure there, we had a lot of success on that side of the ball. So, again, I think it's pretty simple to implement, but I think, when you break it down, you look at some of the different reads and some of the different things that you can do out of it, I think it's very, very difficult to guard.
Yeah. Hey, one question, Matt, and then I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna make sure you can share your screen. Did you have teams that did a really good job reading the defense and making good decisions? And were there other teams where you maybe pinged a few calls in there for what particular action to run out of it? Did you have a range like that at all?
Yeah, no question. I think even especially early, in my first couple of years as a head coach, you kind of are more almost paranoid in terms of, hey, I got to make a call every single time down the floor. And I'll never forget the night before we played ETSU in the Southern Conference Championship game, Billy called me and he said, man, let your players be players. Don't try to overcoach. And that was great advice, especially in that moment. I think you've got to give your guys some concepts. You got to give them some different things and some different reads to make, and then let them go out there and play. So I think early on, I tried to control it a little more than probably I needed to. And then later on in my career too, it was like, hey, it became a thing like make the read, make the right play. Also, don't do the same thing every single time down, right? And we're going to get into the video and talking about the tandem side and different things like that, but just mix up what we're doing. Also, if we've got a point guard that's the top guy on the tandem side, and we've got a really, really good shooter who's the bottom guy on the tandem side, well, we probably want the point guard in the pick and roll. So let's make sure we don't back cut them. We don't flare them. In that situation, we just throw it to them and we stay in the spread. So I think, trying to give the players freedom once you teach it and implement it, and let those guys that go out there and execute it and make plays.
I'll say this one thing, and you have control now, Matt. You can share your screen. But as Coach gets ready to do that, I'll say this. That offense, when it's run well, it is a monster to guard. So much to the point, my 4 years at Arizona with Sean Miller, we literally would put in our special defense at the beginning of our implementation of our defense because so many teams ran it well. And we had to know, especially with Sean being the defensive-minded coach that he is, how are we going to guard that? And you're exactly right, man. If you there's so many different options. The floor is spread, and players have freedom. And when it's run well, man, it's really, really hard to stop it. One of the things it does is just it moves the ball. It gets the ball from side to side.
Yes.
Love it. So you
I
got it,
too,
Coach.
And Coach, I think, and here's what I'm going to do once I do share my screen. I'm going to be kind of dialed in on the film here. So if someone has a question, if you see someone has a question as I'm going through this, if you want to stop me as I'm going through it, just say, hey, Coach, just stop me as we're doing this. I think we got a intimate group here, I want to make sure that I get everyone's questions asked as we go through it. But I think you bring up a great point. And I used to say this all the time. The ball, when you come down and you just run one pick and roll, or you come down and you make one pass, especially against a set defense, you haven't shifted the help side defense. You haven't moved the defense. And essentially you're forcing yourself into a very, very challenging and difficult shot. Well, this offense, if the ball changes sides of the floor 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times, you're going to break that help side defense down to where you're going to get a good look. Now, whether or not the ball goes in the basket, sometimes that's out of our control. But, I think that's a great point. It helps with ball movement, player movement, kind of gets everyone involved in terms of touching the ball as well, right? So you get your 4s and your 5s that are up there on the perimeter. Everyone wants to play on the perimeter. I was on a podcast yesterday talking about this, the term power forward. I don't even think that exists anymore, right? Like who's a power forward nowadays? Like Karl Malone is long gone, is it a hybrid, whatever you want to call it, but there's no more power forwards. Everyone wants to play behind the perimeter. Everyone wants to stretch the floor. And I think an offense like this kind of gives everyone an opportunity to do that. Now, we as coaches, you've got to trust and believe in your players that, hey, listen, if my 5-man catches it on the perimeter, man, I'm going to give him the confidence to square up to the basket right now. And if he's got his feet set and he's got a good look, go ahead and take it. But I think this kind of, with the way that the game is evolving, and, you even look at, who are the 2 best centers in the NBA? You're probably going to go Jokic and Joel Embiid. Well, as good as those guys are inside with their footwork and playing with their back to the basket, man, those guys are on the perimeter a lot. So I think an offense like this, I think it helps with that. But again, there's options out of it to get guys the ball in and around the basket as well. But it kind of gets everyone involved, which I think is important.
Agreed. Awesome.
So let me do this and just tell me, Coach, when we're up and running here.
Okay, for sure.
It's kind of just, I think it's loading.
Okay. Yeah, the screen I see has a Zoom screen broadcast, stop broadcast, microphone off. I'm not the technical guy. Hopefully, there we go. There we go.
Okay, good now?
Yep, we're getting there. Maybe you can, yeah.
Can everybody see that? We good?
Can everyone else see? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes. Okay.
Is there any way to get rid of that little box on the top right or minimize it?
This one right here? The one that you're in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to see myself.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I. Okay.
It's not a huge deal.
Actually, I kind of like it, Coach Elkin. Just looking at
the only reason
and
I like it is because it gives somebody an opportunity to ask a question, and I can kind of see what we're talking about. So we're kind of face to face. So if that's all right, is everybody good with
Well,
that?
initially it was actually Coach Phelps's face, so that's why I really wanted. But if I'm going to be talking or you're talking, I guess it's fine. As long as somebody named Matt is up there, we're good.
All right, I like it. Okay, so this is essentially, it's probably about a 7-minute edit. My man Jake Kurtz made. I spoke at a bunch of different clinics, over the years, and Jake kind of developed this. He's now at Northern Illinois with Rashawn Burno. So it's about a 7-minute edit with just a bunch of different options and everything. And, I'll stop it and kind of explain some things and talk through some things. But, even like just initially this first clip, right? We're coming down and this is in transition. This is off a make. Okay, so we know right now, we talked about this on the spaces, all right, and we've got a small lineup in the game when you look at the lineup that's on the floor right now. Our 4-man inbound of the ball, he's really trailing the play. He is much more of a guard in terms of this situation. And if you look at our 5, he's even more of a smaller 5. And we talked about this, like even in transition when we came down, if the defense is set or the 5-man is back, we don't want our 5 going down here and trying to establish position on the block and wrestling with him and essentially clogging the floor, right? You can see that their 2 front court players are already back. They're already back on defense. The defense is set. So if the ball's on this side of the floor, and these are the spots that we're trying to get occupied in transition, okay? We want to get both corners occupied if we can, okay? And this is our point guard here. This was another ball handling guard here. But now we've got our tandem side. And maybe actually, I don't remember if this is off a make or a miss. This must be off a miss because we've got our tandem side here. We're trying to get these spots in the corners occupied. But you can see we got 2 guards here and the ball is coming up the right side of the floor. So we're actually in a pretty good position here. And the first teaching point I would say, just in terms of like running pick and rolls, in general, is you can see as he goes into this, and let me rewind it a little bit. I want you to just pay attention to the angle at which this ball screen is being set, right? So number 20 is going into this, and you can see a lot of times guys set pick and rolls and their shoulders are more angled to over here at half court. This is a great screen because his shoulders are completely angled and parallel to the sideline. That's what we want when we run a ball screen. That's what we always taught. Try to get that top foot right here on the 3-point line, but his shoulders are completely square to the sideline. And here you can see the 4-man's coming in and trailing the play. So, we're in it. I mean, this is the continuity here, right? The first look as the big that catches the ball in the special spot is 1, can I catch and shoot? Or 2, the opposite big roll into the basket, is he open for a layup? And this is simple, right? He catches, he's beyond the 3-point line in scoring range. We'd like him to catch this ball right here around the 3-point line, right here, in terms of, being in a working area, but he makes the right read. There is nobody on help side defense here. So that means this high-low pass is wide open.
Yeah, they know it's coming. They're just really, really late.
That's right. That's exactly right. So,
Coach, can I ask a question? Because I know it was a big deal for us. Your guy advancing the ball. What about his path? Talk about not getting too close to the sideline. Do you have a path where you'd like him to be, and then to also use the ball screen? We didn't want that guy to get pinned on the sideline, so to speak.
We always talked about get to a working area.
Yep, got it. Yep, good.
So
Which he is.
If the guy with the ball right now, Coach, if he's all the way out here above the coaching line or above the hash line here, out here near the slip knot, this pick and roll, we're getting nothing out of this.
Yep.
This is a useless pick and roll. Like we never want to run a useless pick and roll. This is if he's out here and he's not in a working area, this layup doesn't.
I love that working area.
Got to get to a working area. So even coming down in transition, let's just say number 2 was on the ball side and number 1 here was in this corner. He's still got to do the best job that he can at getting to a working area. Okay. And we would label guys, and I think we talked about this a little bit on the spaces, was, your bust out or your breakout guys, right? So I look at this lineup that's on the floor right now. And this was a really good team. This was a 29-win team at Chattanooga. You've got essentially a point guard with the ball here. Our starting point guard's over here. This is a guy that came off the bench that played the backup point guard role. 23 was arguably the best player in the league that year, who could also put it down and play in pick and roll. He's playing at the 4 spot right now. And number 2 was a playmaker off the bounce. So all of these guys could handle.
Yeah.
So if any of the 4 of them had the ball at one point, they could bring it up the floor. And we would try to establish that, through practice in the summer and trying to, get some data. I'm like, all right, who's got a positive assist turnover ratio? Who can handle, who can make plays? And that if you can get more guys in there that can do that, it just makes it more difficult to guard.
Yeah.
So, and Coach, me and you talked about this a little bit earlier. Like, all right, now this is off a make. Okay. And this is essentially a set or a quick hitter that we would run to get into this offense, right? If you have a really, really good front court player, all right, especially a 5-man, like I said, I think the term power forward, I think you got to throw that out. I just, you know, very rarely, and again, I talked about this on a podcast yesterday, like, does 3 out, 2 in even exist even more? Like, is anyone like 3 out, 2 in anymore? It's 4 round 1 or it's 5 out. I mean, that's essentially, you know, the way the game has transcended into. So, but if you had a really good front court player that you wanted to run some pick and roll continuity and you wanted to leave him down here on the block, like essentially this 5-man is here. Now, this is just a quick hitter that we would use to get into our continuity, kind of dribble handoff, flip it back to the 4. And now we're going into a single side pick and roll with our 1, our 4, and we could duck the 5-man in here. Again, special, what we used to call it, sprint the 5 right up here beyond the 3-point line. But if you have a good front court player that you want to play with his back to the basket, that can also carve out some space. Okay. So if you look at this situation here, we've got a single side pick and roll, and bang, right here, as this ball crosses the midline, he should be ducking in. And if he takes this 5-man away, number 1 could turn the corner and get a layup. But look, we've got a single side pick and pop situation where this team's not switching. So this is a wide open shot for number 0 here on the wing as well. So if you're playing against a team that's not switching 1 through 4, this is a good thing to do as well. And in terms of, man, duck a 5-man in. You can get some single side pick and pops, which should open up the floor a little bit, especially if you have a 4-man that can really shoot.
Hey, Coach, I got it. I love this. If you're doing this for me alone tonight, man, I'm great. And I'll shut up eventually because I want everyone else to ask questions. But I love the movement to get the ball back to your point guard. How many people would just push the wing to the corner, right? And just he'd keep the ball. But instead, you get the movement. He gets the ball out of his hands. You get 2 other guys that touch the ball, and then he gets it back in triple threat where he's not, you know, like, boom, now he can go to work. Like, I just love that. I love that. Just a simple thing of he's not dominating the ball. You had 2 other guys touch it, and then he gets it back to the ball screen.
I think the more guys offensively that can touch it in a possession, I think the better for your team. It keeps everyone involved, and you know, I use the term move the floor. Like, I want the floor to move before we get to the exact action that we want to get to, because maybe that loosens up the defense, right? Yeah. A lot of people say, like, you know, get the advantage, keep the advantage. That's the whole point of offense. Get the advantage, keep the advantage, which I like that too. But just even something simple like this, and I stole this from Brad Stevens. In fact, you can see on the bottom here, we called it Celtic because I stole it from him, but it's just a little dribble drive, pitch, back to a single side. Like, especially if you're playing against a team that's not switching. Like, to me, one of the hardest pick and rolls to guard is when your big has it on the perimeter and he throws a chest pass and we go into this ball screen. Like, I call it a throw ahead pick and roll. Like, that for this guy, especially bigs that can't move, and that's tough to guard. That's tough to guard. So this clip here, you'll see this is an underneath out of bounds situation, and the play kind of gets messed up. Okay, it's essentially was supposed to be number 20 kind of messes this play up a little bit. We're essentially trying to get to like a roll replace. He doesn't really set a screen, and the floor kind of stops. And now our guys know, all right, we got to get back to our continuity. Okay, we've got to get back to it. And we use the term all the time, find a home. Like, find a home. Like, don't let the floor stop. Because the second that the floor stops, the defense can get set. And now what happens? In college, it's turns into a shot clock violation. Or we've got one guy out in the middle of the floor that's calling someone out or waving someone into a middle pick and roll. We don't want that. Keep the floor moving. We run an action, doesn't work out. We can always get back to our spots. Lost a little bit here. Fast forward. We run an action, breaks down. We know, all right, keep the ball and the floor moving, get back to our spots. Here's that throw ahead pick and roll again. 5-man nose. Okay, we've got a down screen on the tandem side, which we'll talk a little bit more, okay, in a second. But we keep the floor moving.
Throw ahead. Love it.
Right? So look how the floor looks now, okay? 5-man here catches. His first look is shot. The 4-man, actually, this is a guard that's in the game. He ended up popping on this side, which is fine. Okay, he's not going to be open there. 20's look then should be shot. And then this is our tandem side. What do we have going on here? Now, the team we're playing against was trying to switch and deny. So number 4 knows, hey, if they're switching and denying and this guy's trying to hold the help side, man, if I just screen my own man, I'm going to get my teammate a wide open shot. And that's what happens there.
Yeah, really good.
Coach, quick question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
What does player development look like? Obviously, teams are probably going to scout you and might guard ball screens differently. Are you practicing when practice starts in September, guarding or playing against an ice, a blitz, a hard hedge, a soft hedge, a switch, or do you just wait until teams that you know are going to do that as you prepare for that specific game?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Okay. And I think that through individual instruction, that's the best time to play against it all, build it in. Because what you don't want to do is all of a sudden, we're playing against UNC Greensboro on a Thursday night and we've never played against hard hedging because we're a team that plays against an ice.
Right.
One of the things that's been good for me just during this time too is trying to go around and watch other teams practice and see how, teams implement things and do different things. I saw a team practice one time that had and this is depending on your situation can be a challenge to do at times, but when they were running 5-on-0 offense, there was bodies out there, right? So there was assistant coaches out there on the floor, essentially playing different pick and roll coverages. So, one time it maybe deep level, one time it was an ice, one time it was a half blitz. And the kids are out there trying to have to react to that. I thought that was unbelievable, in terms of playing against different coverages. But yeah, when we're breaking this down in individual instruction, it's like, all right, we've got 5 makes coming off a wing pick and roll, playing against a hard hedge, right? All right. Now we've got 5 makes taking on an ice, getting in the lane, splitting the big, get down the lane, finish off 2 feet. I think you have to play against them all because if you're a team that's strictly an ice team or a hard hedge team, and that's what you play against every single day in practice, you don't want there to be a surprise come November 7th. And all of a sudden you're playing, Vermont, who deep levels everything, and your guys haven't seen it. I think getting your players to play against all the different coverages, especially, even over the summer, right? Building it in over the summer, I think is huge.
Love it.
Great question.
Great question. Agreed.
Great question.
Coach McCall, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of situations, if any, would you put your guys in practice to rep the find a home concept where it's kind of random and
love it?
You got a really
great question.
Yeah. So would do 2 things, Cody, and that's a great question. And I got this from Reggie Witherspoon. And the first thing we would do is we would do it 5-on-0. Okay, so I would line up the offense completely spread out across half court. And I would have the ball. And I would basically take it and I would set the ball somewhere on the court. So it may be on the block. It may be at the halo. It may be at the nail at the free throw line. But they would have to basically pick the ball up and find a home from that moment, that moment, right? wherever I put the ball. I could put it in the corner. I could put it on the wing. I could put it at the top of the key. They would have to sprint in, pick the ball up, and find a way to get into offense. And then after doing it 5-on-0, what we would do is we would now do it 5-on-5. And we would tell the defense would line up on the baseline. The offense would line up across half court. And once I set the ball down, the defense knew the first pass is not live. The second pass is. So they could pick the ball up, throw one pass, and now it's live, and they have to find a home and get back into offense. Good question.
Hey, Coach, one little addition to that. We would do that. Let's say you're going 5-on-0 and the shot goes up. Well, we're also practicing our transition defense. So, rise of the shot, 1 and 2 sprinting back, 3, 4, 5, they're crashing. Well, if they don't hear anything, then they're going transition defense. And like you, a coach would have a ball. If you call any name on the offense, then you fire them the ball. And while 3, 4, and 5 are going to crash and 1 and 2 is getting back, all of a sudden you have to get home from there. So I have the ball. You could throw it to anybody, and guys are like, oh, man, we got another possession, and we get into it. So it's similar to your deal, but I just thought it was great of conditioning their minds to, look, we may get right back into a possession, and they could be anywhere on the floor.
Right.
They have to find a home.
Right. No, it's great. And don't let the floor stop. Don't let it stop. Like, I don't care if the 4-man sprints to the corner and he picks the ball up.
Right.
Like, all right, how are we getting back into offense? We got to find a way to get back to offense, because one of the things that it was always kind of a pet peeve of mine, it was like when someone would take it and look up at the shot clock, and they'd be like, oh, there's 10 seconds left. Let me dribble the ball out to the middle of the floor and try to sprint. Now you've already wasted another 5 seconds, right? And we're going to get caught with a shot clock violation or taking a really, really bad shot. Where if we kept the ball moving and the floor moving, man, we could get a layup.
Good stuff.
So I'll keep rolling this because I want to be able to get through it, because there's a bunch of good stuff in here. Again, this is a situation. We're coming down. We're telling our 5, look, man, this guy's really, really big. Don't go down here and wrestle with him. Just go right into a drag, okay, and we can get the floor moving. All right, we've got our spots occupied. So if you go back, right, we've got both corners occupied. And the big knows when he catches it in the special spot, that's his first look. If I can throw that pass high-low to the big, if I didn't have a shot, I'm making that pass.
Awesome.
Here we go. We get a steal in transition. We're trying to get these spots occupied. You'd like to see number 1 sprint more down here deep into the corner. You got 2 bigs trailing the play. This guy was a 5-man. His name was Justin Toyo. He could really, really pass. So we felt 1,000% comfortable playing through him. But you can see 2 bigs trailing the play. 15 was a really, really good shooter, not great at playing in pick and roll. So he's like, hey, look at him. He's pointing. He's like, all right, let's get into it. Let's get the floor moving. We got a single side pick and roll. Here he goes on his back cut. We get a wide open 3 at the top of the key. Here's that same action Celtic. Doesn't have him. Just the movement itself, it causes the defense. Yeah, it's hard to guard, right? Like
there's no hesitation from your guys right here at all.
None. They just keep moving. They keep moving.
Coach, when you're
this guy knows this read. Go ahead, man.
Sorry, when you're going through your stuff, like for scouting purposes, would you see where the tag is coming from on film and then run certain things out of your special to attack that? Or would you
Cody, that's a good question. I think that the thing about it is you got to teach your guys to read. And we would teach them to read. We called it the white line, right? Like we would draw a line down the middle of the floor. And essentially that was like if the ball was on, like I'm talking more defense now, if the ball was on this side of the floor, we wanted all 5 guys to be at least touching that line, right? So offensively flip that. Like you've got to read the line, right? So right here, if I'm coming off this ball screen, okay, there's nobody on, like, he's too worried about this guy cutting through. He's late. They've committed 2 guys to the ball here. He's open. Okay. Now, if you're playing against a team that switches, like in this offense on the tandem side, they just switch and deny, right? So let's see if we can get to another clip.
Celtic.
All right. So here, again, we just talked about this guy. He was a really, really good shooter. He was the guy that we wanted in pick and roll. So this is our tandem side, right? So a lot of teams in this offense, what happens is the main thing in this offense is this guy would hard back cut, this guy would lift, and we get to another ball screen. What makes it difficult to guard is if you mix up what they're doing. If you just back cut this guy every single time, it's number 20. I think this is number 20. Number 20 is just going to basically take the bottom guy and he's going to take the guy back cutting. And that's called switch and deny. So if we see a team that's doing that, we would tell our guys, do not back cut, because you're not going to get anything out of the back cut. Okay. Either flare, which you'll see here in a second. We would call it blast. Some people may call rapid, or, a wrap cut, where he would, the second the 5-man would catch it up here, he would wrap off him to the basket, right? Or screen your own man. Okay. So essentially, like you just saw him make a 3 earlier on in the video, just down screen your own man and lift this guy. But if you just back cut, we're not going to get anything out of it. So if you'd see on film, hey, man, like, because a lot of teams run this offense, hey, they're switching and denying. Guys, we're not back cutting this game because we're not going to get anything out of it. Does that make sense, Cody?
Yes. Thank you.
Again, this is just different reads, just different things. Don't do the same thing twice, right? Like even here, like we're a little sped up. We're not waiting on balls. We're not waiting on the screen. We're kind of dribbling it too early. Okay. But the floor kept moving and we get a layup.
Yeah. Good.
Coach, can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely, man.
You showed the 2 Celtic looks, and then you made the point on the first one to talk about the pass and follow ball screen. But on the second one, it was more of kind of into a DHO or a little flip. So I'm just curious, like, are you more concerned with just getting the ball moving and flowing, like in your offense, so you don't necessarily care if it's a pass into a ball screen or a DHO or whatnot, or like, are there certain guys personnel wise that you feel comfortable handling it, that you're okay with them going into a DHO versus guys that are just catch it and move it and follow it?
Well, again, Matt, great question. I think the throw ahead is so much harder to guard. And I think a DHO at times, if you're reading the defense, right? So I would tell our guys all the time, like, if you're going to go into a DHO, if you're going to go into a dribble handoff, that means whoever's guarding the guy that you're trying to go into the DHO with is kind of being jammed up and pressured. Other than that, it's almost kind of like a sign of laziness. Like, man, it's just, maybe it's easier to go in. Like, I always wanted the throw ahead, but if a guy's denied, then go into the DHO. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I know it's something that we've talked about early in practices with just our spacing, and the guards are creeping up, and we want to try to make sure that they're staying spaced out to get into it. So I wasn't sure if you had like an approach, or if it was something that you really looked at, or if I'm just kind of splitting hairs.
No, I think the throw ahead pick and rolls is one of the harder pick and rolls to guard. I think at DHO, you can give him space. He can slide through. I think it's easier to guard. I think you go into it. I think where a DHO becomes hard to guard is if a guy's really, really being kind of jammed up on the wing, where he doesn't feel comfortable throwing that pass. And are they committing to the ball, or are they just switching? But I think the throw ahead is like I would say to guys too, like, why are you going into a dribble handoff here? He's not denied. Throw it to him. If he's denied, I get it. But he's not denied right now. So throw it to him and sprint into it, right? Like this guy right here, like as soon as he throws this, he's got to be following that up and sprinting into it. Another teaching point is too, is as we would talk about to get the right angle on the pick and roll, tell this guy to take 2 steps inside the perimeter and then sprint into the ball screen. Does that make sense? It's almost like I take 2 steps toward the basket and then turn my shoulders, and now I'm sprinting in to get the right angle. But like sprint ahead, throw ahead ball screens, to me, those are the, like if I'm coming out of the post to set a pick and roll in the wing, I think that's pretty easy to guard. We can ice, we can have whatever our coverage is. Man, you got a guy, especially a big that's not very mobile, and he's got to like go from guarding the perimeter to now the ball gets thrown to the wing, and I've got to chase and get into my coverage. I think the more throw ahead ball screens you can put your team in this offense, I think it's very difficult to guard.
Did you have a teaching point for your bigs coach on like getting to the screen? Like Coach McMahon at Murray State would always talking about arriving alone. Is there something you would tell your bigs to do in regards to that?
Cody, what we would want, like I just said, like this guy right here, this is not probably going to be a great angle. I want him taking 2 steps to get inside the 3-point line and almost like initiating contact for a sec with the guy that's guarding him, and then sprint over so his shoulders are parallel to the sideline. But even look here, this team's not respecting this guy's ability to shoot threes, so they're trying to take the back cut away with the 5-man, right?
Yeah.
He's all the way back in the lane.
It's kind of the same teaching point you would give like a guard trying to get open on the wing, coach, like you were saying with screening, just get into, make contact, and then you can break off kind of.
Make contact and break off. That's exactly right.
Coach Elkin, good stuff. Coach Cohen, quick question. Arrive alone. The point of that is just like, man, you get there, you leave your defender in the dust, you arrive alone at the ball screen. Was that the concept with Coach McMahon?
Yeah, he would just say it's the fastest sprint of your life to the ball screen, arrive alone.
Love it.
I love that. That's great.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Here's a good point too. You know, if you're playing against a team that hard hedges, right? We would always tell our guys, don't dribble the hedge. Okay. Like if we like, look at this, like number 15 has the ball, and some coaches teach, you know, attack his hips, you know, what, like we would drill this, especially like right before a game, we knew the team was hard hedging. Like, don't dribble the hedge, get the ball out of the hedge. Right. So number 15 doesn't even put the ball on the ground. Don't waste your dribble versus the hedge. Get it out as fast as you can. So I think that's something that we tried to always teach too. It's like just don't dribble the hedge. Get it out of the hedge.
Love it.
Again, you can see how they're guarding. They're not guarding number 5, and he can make that shot. They're not guarding this guy. Now we've got 2 essential 5s in the game. They didn't guard him. They tried to guard it the same way. And if you got bigs that can be able to shoot and make that, it makes it that much more difficult to guard. Okay, tandem side. Here we got the back cut. Corner lift 3.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are playing on a miss. Again, transition. All right, man, defense is back. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys already back. Now we got to find a home. We don't have an opportunity in transition. We've got to find a home. We've got to get to our spots. Point guard's here. He doesn't back cut. Now we're in a spread situation. This is good.
Yeah, 0 transition time really, Matt, there from your initial transition to getting into your flow. It was great. Like your guys are like, they're like, they get home fast.
Got to get home fast.
Just watch it. Yeah.
Like I would always say this too, like we're trying to score. If we can get a layup, a dunk, or a rhythm 3 off in the first 3 seconds of the shot clock, we'll take it, right? Like what don't we want on defense, right? We had no's, okay? No rhythm 3s, no layups, no dunks, no second chance points, and no silly fouls. Like those were our 4 no's on defense. We'll flip it on offense, man. We want a rhythm 3. We want a layup and a dunk. We want to get to the free throw line more than the other team. And we want to get second chance points, right? So if we can get a layup, a dunk, or a rhythm 3 off in the first 3 seconds of the shot clock, we'll take it. If we don't have that opportunity, man, our first ball screen, it's got to be with 26 seconds on the shot clock. We can't be getting into offense under 20. Now we're going to be up against the shot clock because we're teaching ball movement, player movement. The ball needs to change sides of the floor. Well, if we run our first pick and roll at 18 seconds on the shot clock, we're missing out on essentially 8 seconds of a possession, which would make us easier to guard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Coach, did you chart like numbers of passes in games, and what would be a good number for you guys if you did?
We were always, if we could get 200 plus, we had success in that game. And it was amazing too, man. Like you'd go in the film room the day after a game, and let's say we played Dayton. Guys, we had 140 passes in the game. We lost by 22, and then, we'd follow it up and play Rhode Island 3 nights later. Like, guys, man, we passed it 210 times. Like it works. Utilize each other, share the game, move it, pass it. It works. We can score. We've got weapons. We've got different guys. Because I think a lot of times, like, especially the generation and how things, are going, everything's instant gratification. It's this, that, it's social media, it's your brand. It kind of translates into like, man, if I pass it, am I going to get it back?
Right.
Like, am I going to get it back? And some guys are like, man, well, why'd you shoot this ball? Well, I shot it because I didn't think I was going to get it back. Look what happens if you come off this ball screen, you throw it ahead. All of a sudden, we've got movement on this side of the floor. Now the ball changes sides of the floor, and you get a layup. When you could take a contested pull-up 2, with 2 seconds on the shot clock versus 27 seconds on the shot clock, it's the same shot. So I think anytime you can move it 200 plus times a game, that was our goal.
Great.
So. Again, transition, defense is set. We got to find a home, keep the floor moving, get back to your spots. There's the back cut on the tandem side. Okay, there's another back cut on the tandem side. And now you can see what Lipscomb is doing here is they're staying with their man, but they're also trying to deny the wing. So what's that going to open up? Fake dribble handoffs.
Love it.
Fake dribble. They're staying with their own, right? And he makes a great read here. And he sees, all right, they're staying with their own. They're trying to deny everything. They're trying to jam up the wings. I'm not going to panic. Get down the lane and make a play. And again, if your 4s and 5s can play off the bounce, it makes it that much more difficult to guard. Back cut. Okay. Again, 5-man catches in the special spot. Can he catch and shoot? Just looking at him hard. Like, this is another teaching point in this offense. Like, these bigs, you can't make C cuts. It has to be direct lines to the block.
Yeah.
Transition, find a home.
Nice. It's a pretty high percentage shot, Coach McCall, that last one.
Not bad, right, Coach?
Yeah.
All right, we find a home. Defense is back. It's set. Rhythm 3. You know, so you could just kind of see how we always kind of flow into it.
Yeah. Really good flow into it.
We never want to pull the ball out.
Right.
And again, you got to teach your guards like what's the read, right? Like where who's on the help side, who's on the white line. You know, if no one's there, man, that pocket pass or lob pass to the big, that's going to be there, right? In this situation here is perfect.
Your guy really turned the corner. I mean, he lowered his shoulder. Not this one. I'm sorry. Keep it going. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. No. Keep it going. Don't. Yeah. No. But he took advantage of the hard hedge. He saw.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, you know, all right, now this may be a call. We're just going to run a middle pick and roll replace, try and get into it. We don't have anything. All right. Back into what? Find a home.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a concept, and it doesn't really happen here, but on a turn down on a pick and roll, we always talked about, all right, we need 3 spots occupied. We need the drift, which is here. We need the diagonal, which is here. And then this big should be diving right to the halo. Drift, diagonal, and dunker. Those are the 3. That's a John Pelfrey deal. Drift, diagonal, and dunker. We wanted him diving right to the halo and have those 3 spots occupied on any baseline drive.
Yeah.
Defense is set. Don't panic. Find a home. Here's that help side. We throw it to him. This is another concept for us. If we hit the roll or we throw it to the short corner, same thing. Drift, diagonal, and dunker.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. That's really good.
Another option on the tandem side, we talked about this on the spaces, is that flare action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it here. And the timing on this is when the big catches the ball, whoever's setting the flare on the tandem side, he's got to be there. So it's got to be bang, bang, right? Yeah. So like if the big catches in the special spot, the second that ball hits his hands, that flare screen has to be taking place.
Coach, question for you. Would that be a read based on number 4 for Iowa State's positioning, or would that be a read based on number 2 for Chattanooga being a good shooter, or a combination of both?
Combination of both. So if we have a really good shooter, let's run this.
I mean, he's set up for the flare, but you also got a good shooter there too, right?
So you've got a really good shooter here, okay? And here's the other thing too, Coach. If they're playing this where he would be sitting on the help side, this defender right here,
mm-hmm.
and we know, hey, this guy is going to deny him, that's a great time to run this.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great time to run this.
Well, he's got he can
because on this flare for the bottom guy to try to close out to him on the wing, that's a long run.
Yeah.
If he sets a good screen, that's a long run. You know, again, here you're going to see us try to run an action. You know, it's some people call this hook. We've got a flare screen into a ball screen, roll, replace. Don't have anything out of it. Man, keep it moving. Don't stop. Excuse me. There's that flare again. Here's the other, like, here's what happens. If we don't throw it to him off the flare, we go into a dribble handoff.
Way to keep the floor moving, right? If you don't throw it to them, you have an immediate option. Guys,
immediate option. Keep it moving.
Yep.
And here's one thing, Coach, that's not on there, and I don't think it's on this last clip either. And this is what Anthony did an unbelievable job of, and if you go back and you watch Dayton from when they had Obi Toppin, right? Like they would throw it to the guard off the flare and he wouldn't have a shot. Okay, so let me see if I can go back to one of these clips here.
You threw it to him. He didn't shoot it. Then
He didn't shoot it. So let's go back to the Iowa State game. We went all the way back to the beginning. All right, so right here, see this? See how the floor looks? So we throw it to 2 off the flare.
Yeah, he
And
doesn't
let's say
shoot it.
2 doesn't have a shot. 24 would then up screen for number 0
Yeah, that's good.
and dive him to the basket.
Yeah.
Like that keeps the floor moving. If you go back and watch that Dayton team with Obi Toppin, like Obi would get dunks off that. Like he would set that up screen and Obi would dive into the rim and it would just be tomahawk. I think actually versus us, he like went between his legs and dunked on us at one point.
Yeah.
So, but that's the video I have, man. I'd love to answer any other questions or anything anybody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Coach,
Yeah. Ask.
oh, sorry, Coach. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to encourage you guys to ask questions. Go ahead, Coach Cohen.
So, Coach, if a team's like heavily denies and plays on the top side, would you let's say this is off of a make, would you do different things like start in a box or do different things to like get into it if you know a team's heavily denying and playing on the top side?
One thing, Cody, I think if you're playing against a team that's heavily denying, right, I think the best way to initiate offense, especially if you're wanting to get into this, is play in the middle of the floor. Okay, so maybe it's a middle ball screen. Maybe have your big sprint out there and screen at the logo. I think trying to, like, you know, when I was at Florida and Frank Martin was at South Carolina, and, you know, Billy would always talk to our guys about playing in the alleys, right? Especially against a team that's just completely jamming up the wings. I think another thing you can do is try to screen into the initial pick and roll. Okay, so let's just get to a situation here in terms of just how the floor looks. All right, so let's just say this is our 4-man here, number 24, right? And you've got a guard here in the corner. I would tell this guard to get to a working area, and then I would call it 25, 35, based on who I wanted, 24, 34. So I would screen the 2-man and go screen the 4-man's man and sprint him into the pick and roll to initiate it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Just trying to alleviate some of that pressure. But I think if you can play in the alleys to start versus a team that's really, really denying and jamming up the wings, that's where I'd begin. The other thing too is blast cut. Okay, so let's go back here. So let's see. All right. Yeah, that's a bad example, but if this ball was thrown to number 20, you see this, Cody?
Yes.
The top guy in the tandem, he's going to be denied. This is what you're talking about.
Yep.
We would call it blast. Somebody may say wrap, but almost send him around him the second he catches the ball to try and make this guy think for a second of, oh man, I may have to help. And now that's going to open up number 4 on a throw ahead pick and roll. So blast, don't stand, don't back cut, get off the wing and wrap around him and try to alleviate some of that pressure. I think that's another thing to do.
Yeah, that's good.
I actually talked to Jorge, Coach, pretty often. He told me they do that at Gonzaga too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a couple guys just jumped on, Coach McCall. We changed the time tonight from 9 p.m. Eastern time to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So a couple guys just jumped on. And I apologize, but we definitely got into a rhythm there. And anyway, we started at 8 tonight. A couple guys just jumped on, but we're still asking questions and going through a couple things. Coach McCall has gone through his ball screen continuity, 5 high. Different people call it different things, but really good stuff. Anybody else have any questions? Coach, I had a question on the tandem side. Again, you would help your guys at times and give them a particular action that's probably going to be effective. But by and large, they're reading it on the tandem side as well, based on your personnel and based on the way the defense is playing.
Yeah, but no question. And I think, again, like even like this situation here, like our 5-man catches it in the special spot, and this is our tandem side. Well, these 2 guys, it didn't matter because they could both really play in pick and roll. So we could back cut, we could flare, we would teach, don't do the same thing twice. But if this guy's a really, really good shooter, and this is the guy that you want in the pick and roll, man, he's got to get out, right? So it's either got to be a flare for him for a shot, or it's got to be a hard back cut. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you flip it and he's a really, really good player in pick and roll, and you're really good shooters in the corner, shoot, as this single side pick and roll is happening over here, these guys should be talking and communicating.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, like I'm going to stay high. And then when the big catches it, he's almost calling for it, and we're staying in a spread. He comes off. Now we got a shooter filling behind. We've got a 4 or 5 roll into the basket. We've got a lot of options out of that too.
Coach, hold it right there. I just want to make mention one thing. Sometimes you have a team that's really on the other end, and your 3-man is a guy who he's playing the 3, but he's not super with the ball in his hands. You really don't want him in pick and roll. Let's just say that number 1 was that guy. I coached his team at Prolific Prep, and a guy that's going to be a starter, second-year starter at Washington State, Muhammad Gay. He was 6'11". Let's say he was playing number 1. We would either send him on a first cut. What do you call that, Matt?
Just a hard back cut.
Yep, hard back cut. Or we would take him on what you called the blast or the wrap. And then number 23 would have the ball. And as your guys coming for the pitch ahead ball screen, number 1 would just button hook down there, and you could throw it into him right there as the ball screens happen. And again, we would do that. Two different concepts. Number 1, he's not a good ball handler. So number 1, we don't want him using pick and roll. So he's going to get out of there all the time. And then number 2, if he's also got a size advantage, then you have a chance to throw it in there. I'm sure you've done some stuff along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a 3-man that can post, I think that's awesome. The other thing, Coach, let's say you've got a 5 that's really, really good with his back to the basket, but yet you want to stay, in this continuity.
Yeah.
Right. And I keep going back to Dayton, with Obi, because they would do this some with him. We had a really, really good front court player at UMass that we would do this with as well. Like, we would call it special back. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let me see if I can get to a clip here. And again, we would want the floor to keep moving. Okay. So let's see here. All right. This is perfect. All right. So number 5 is a 5-man. Okay. So there's a single side ball screen here, and we throw it ahead here. And this is now we've got our tandem side over here. If we wanted to get him isolated on the block, we would say, hey, special back, special back. So when the ball got thrown ahead to 0 would ball fake here to the tandem side, and we'd snap it right back to this guard, and the 5-man would duck in and isolate him on the block.
Yeah.
So we've got the movement, we've got everything going. You've got their 5 chasing guys around the perimeter, and all of a sudden, special back, and we just snap it back to the guard and duck him in. That's tough to guard.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Kind of similar concept to what you're talking about, Coach.
Yeah, no. There's so many different things. Look, the floor is spread. You have a 5-out look so often, and the ball keeps moving. Get home. That's not how you say it. Or is that how you say it? Get home.
Find a home.
Find a home. Love it.
Like think about this too, coach. Like, and we would do, like, if you ever got like really, really good at it, and like just the wrinkles and stuff that you can do, like coming out of a timeout, right? So like, hey, you've got a guard that's got it going from behind the 3-point line. Okay, man, you could run screen the screener. So get to the tandem side, right? So let's just again, let me set the table here in terms of how we want the floor to look, right? So here's our tandem side.
Yep.
Keep the 5-man low. Back cut number 1, lift number 23. Number 1's going to set a cross screen on 5 over here on the block. We're going to throw it to 23, and then we're going to down screen on him. Just
really good.
Just different wrinkles and stuff to do.
Really good.
Coach McCall, can you just talk about the responsibilities that you give your guys, especially when you're talking about they're all kind of flowing, they're finding a home, and a shot goes up? You might have 5 guys on the perimeter, whereas some teams might traditionally have a guy in the paint or somebody ready in a rebounding position. Can you just talk about like what are you telling them as their responsibilities for guys going to crash the offensive glass, if at all?
I mean, I kind of like what Coach Phelps was talking about earlier. I was 1 and 2 always got to get back to the logo. We've got to get our defense set. I would give the 3-man the freedom to go if the 1 or the 2 hadn't shot it. The 4 and the 5 always had the freedom to get to the backboard. We're trying to get extra possessions. We're trying to play. We want to show effort every single possession. So that was kind of our rules. But wanted our 4 and 5 to go every single time, regardless of where they were on the floor.
So when you guys would you practice a lot of box outs, like with guys crashing from the perimeter? Because in games that would kind of be like what for both offensive and defensive purposes as far as attacking the glass.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think even nowadays it's a little different, right? Like war rebounding was like when I first got to Florida, and like Udonis Haslem was in there, like war rebounding. I mean, there was nothing better. I think those times have changed a little bit. I think you've got to be a little bit more cautious in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, I think doing rebounding drills where guys are flying in from the perimeter, I obviously I think there's tremendous benefit in that, no question.
Coach Elkin, in a perfect world, I loved having guys having strict responsibility and accountability. So it was, rise of the shot, ROS, man. When the teammate goes up 1 and 2 sprints back, and 3, 4, 5, they crash from wherever. And think about it. A lot of times 2 of those guys would be on the perimeter in a situation like this. The 3-man would most likely be on the perimeter, and one of the bigs, he's probably high. I think it's really hard, again, guys are running around the floor, and then all of a sudden you have your 5-man at the 3-point line and you want them to crash. It's great in concept. They don't always do it, but if you can get in the habit of doing that, I think you have something that's really hard to deal with, and you can hold them accountable to every possession. But Matt makes a good point, man. You got to pick your battles in practices nowadays with players nowadays. They're not like they were back with Coach Platt. When you mentioned Coach McCall earlier about guys having their own way and doing their own thing, I thought of Coach Platt's generation, man. That's how he was back in the day. He could do whatever he wanted to. There was no accountability back in the day. I say that with all jest. So anyway, this has been really good. Coach Lewis and Coach Ye, man, I know exactly what you're going to say to me. You're going to be like, you switched up the time, and I got you in the crossfire, and I apologize. We started at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, and Coach McCall kind of gone through his ball screen offense, and it's been good. And again, I apologize. I definitely know that the email Coach Lewis said 8 p.m. Eastern time, so I don't feel bad about that. But I do feel bad about, I know some people got in a rhythm, and Coach Lewis has not missed the Zoom yet. And I almost want to stay on for another 45 minutes, man, just to make sure he gets his run. But I apologize. And by the way, this this is recorded, so I can get that to you guys as well.
Yeah, no worries. I just assumed instead of looking into the detail, the time change. I've heard Coach talk a few times though, so just missed the intimate details of it, but it's
Yeah,
still
he was sharing secret back vault film with us, Coach Lewis, but I got it on video and I can definitely get that to you for sure.
The other thing too, guys, is I have some of this stuff written up. I think I've got to go to my storage unit and get into the archives a little bit, but I've got some PDFs and some different things, and I'm happy to email it to any of you guys. Or look, man, shoot me an email. I love to talk ball. I love, helping guys anywhere I can. I love learning as well. So, Coach, make sure everybody has my email.
Yeah,
address.
I'm gonna type it in right now. Go ahead, slow
Okay.
though. I'm a slow. Go ahead.
Yep, it's my initials, Matthew Wayne McCall, MWM.
Yep.
MWM, V is in Victor,
Yep.
3803
3803. Yep.
at gmail.com.
Got it.
Kind of a complicated email. It's a long story.
No, I mean, I would love to ask you about the 3803, but I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, so my dad was a middle
yourself
linebacker at the University of Florida. He wore the number 38, and then I always wore the number 3. So that's kind of just when you get your email address taken from you, you got to come up with something really fast. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I did there. So
I like it. I like it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, we are we're back with the Twitter Spaces on Monday, and again, I jumped ahead of myself, but Coach Brett Nelson is going to be our guest, the head coach of Holy Cross. He's going to be on the Twitter Spaces on Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and then this has been recorded. So anybody that wants the recording, just let me know, and we can get that to you as well.
Yeah, shoot me an email, guys. Any questions or anything you guys want to talk about, or if I can help anybody on this. Again, like I started the call off with, just got tremendous respect for everybody that's trying to grow and get better. And if I can help with that, as I'm always trying to do the same thing, there's always a point in time to do that. And I have great respect for everybody on this call that's trying to do that. So if I can help in any way, man, please shoot me an email. We can get on the phone. We can get on a Zoom. I can get the magnetic board going out here if I need to, but happy to help in any way I can, Coach.
Awesome. Good stuff. Appreciate everyone tonight, and everyone have a good night, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
All
Coach.
right.
Thanks, Coach.
Take care. Yep. Good night.